Thank you. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to make provision to remove Crown immunity as it applies to prisons for the purposes of health and safety legislation. Madam Deputy Speaker, Katie Allan lived in Clarkston in East Renfrewshire. She had a loving family and a very happy childhood. She was bright, she did well at school. She took herself off to Malawi to volunteer, and she returned from Africa determined to help people. And instead of studying geology at university as she'd intended, she switched to study human geography. She decided and realised that it was people she cared about and not rocks. She was excited about the future. She'd moved into her own flat. She was full of life. She was beautiful. She was loved. She was found hanging in a cell at 10 to 6 in the morning on the 4th of June 2018 at His Majesty's Prison and Young Offenders Institution, Polmont. Madam Deputy Speaker, the problem of prison deaths is UK-wide, but these losses are a particular problem in Scotland, and the loss of young people in prisons is felt especially. Research in April by the Scottish Centre for Crime and Justice Research found that our prison death rates are akin to those in Azerbaijan. An earlier study by the Council of Europe found Scotland's prison suicide rate was more than 2.5 times higher than the average, and about double that of England and Wales. I began with Katie's story because focusing on her case helps make sense of why this problem is so alarming, so acute and so avoidable. In 2017, after a night out, Katie drove home after drinking. She clipped the curb, lost control of her car. She hadn't realised it, but she had hit and injured a pedestrian. She had no previous convictions. Her victim asked for her not to be given a custodial sentence, but she was jailed for 16 months anyway. If anyone deserved a second chance after a stupid, youthful mistake, it was Katie. But that second chance was taken away because of failings by the Scottish Prison Service. We cannot mention Katie without also mentioning William Brown, who my honourable friend, the member for Glasgow North, represents. William also died from suicide in Polmont. The fatal accident inquiry into the loss of both of these precious young people found their deaths to be preventable. Thanks to the Sheriff's findings, the failings of the prison service in these cases are now well documented, they're detailed and they're damning. But one thing out of the 400-page report, its many findings and its recommendations especially sticks in my mind. When we look into prison suicides, we learn an awful new vocabulary. We come across terms like ligature anchor. For William, the ligature anchor was a bunk bed that the inquiry found could have been removed, and worse, had been used previously for suicides in the prison. In the case of Katie, the ligature anchor was a simple doorstop high up on the wall of her cell. A doorstop, Madam Deputy Speaker, a few pounds to replace, a small cost for saving a young life, but it wasn't believed to be worth it. Years after both deaths, nobody in the prison or the prison service had thought to remove the doorstops or to replace them with safer sloping alternatives. Bunk beds had not been removed. The fatal accident inquiry into their deaths found that internal reviews carried out after both deaths hadn't even mentioned the possibility of removing fixtures and cells that could have been used again for further suicides. Nothing for me signifies that institutional lack of care, the failings that somebody somewhere should have been held legally responsible for. And before a fatal accident inquiry, there's an investigation. The police and the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service at first concluded there was insufficient evidence to prosecute. The families of Katie and William challenged this, and eventually the authorities said, yes, there was enough evidence to charge the prison service with breaches of the Health and Safety Act. But there was no prosecution. Why? Because of Crown immunity. Because the Health and Safety at Work Act places duties on state-run prisons, but Crown immunity means they cannot be prosecuted for breaching those duties. If they died in a privately run prison, there would have been a prosecution. In theory, Madam Deputy Speaker, individual prison officers can be prosecuted, but in practice they rarely are, because when their employer is not prosecuted, they are not prosecuted. Indeed, the reason those prosecutions don't happen is that it's argued that individual shortcomings are in the context of systematic failures. In theory, too, the prison services can be prosecuted under corporate manslaughter legislation, but again, in practice, they are not, because of the systematic failings are often judged to take place at the prison level rather than the senior management of the overall service. Those at the bottom pass legal responsibility upwards, those at the top pass it back. Even with the support of the dogged campaigners from Inquest, the charity which focuses on state-related deaths, nobody is found legally responsible. The best the families of the lost can hope for in such circumstances is a censure by the Health and Safety Executive. But even that toothless sanction is almost never used. In a decade, only one prison has received a censure. Madam Deputy Speaker, we've been here before. 3 decades ago, Crown immunity was removed from the NHS, and it has had an impact. To take one grimly comparable case, the Essex Partnership University Foundation Trust was fined £1.5 million for allowing suicides after failing to manage risks from ligature points on their estate. Our prisons are responsible for so many more such deaths, but they are untouchable because of Crown immunity. An untouchable service remains unaccountable. Institutional impunity removes the incentives for institutional change. Institutional change needed at the local, Scottish and UK level. Locally, a review of mental health at Polmont warned that they needed a suicide prevention strategy. Instead, they opted for another review, a review that was never finished. In Scotland, the Human Rights Commission has warned that recommendations agreed decades ago have still not been implemented across the prison service. And across the UK, just last week, the Inspector of Prisons issued an urgent indication warning about conditions at Pentonville and a failure to address repeated concerns following recent suicides. Without legal consequences, prisons across the country appear incapable of learning lessons or making changes. And every day with immunity risks more avoidable deaths. The prison service in Scotland and the government in Edinburgh have called for Crown immunity to be removed, but they need us in this place to do that. But I want to be very clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, this campaign should not be used as an excuse for inaction now. They should not have to wait to be prosecuted in order to fulfil their responsibility to protect lives. But if those running our prisons won't act, and they haven't, they should lose their protection from legal consequence. In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, I remember a friend of mine who lost a child, and they spoke of how a parent grieves twice for such a loss. Once for the young person known and loved, and a second time for the life they would have gone on to live. For Katie's family, the knowledge that she wanted to live a life devoted to helping others and serving others invites them to imagine all the change she would have made as she grew into adulthood. Instead of a life that would have changed the world, we in this place are now left with the tragic responsibility of making sure it is our death that changes things. Her extraordinary mother, Linda, told me that Katie said of her experience in Malawi and Africa, "You know, Mum, prayers are great, but what people really need is practical help." Katie's family, William's family, and the others who've lost dear loved ones due to these institutional failings don't need our prayers, they don't need our sympathies or condolences. They need action, and they need us to provide the accountability that will avoid future tragedies and change the culture that allows these deaths. That's why it's time to end Crown immunity in prisons in Scotland and across the UK. I urge members to support my bill.
Yeah. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Martin Rhodes and myself, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Blair MacDougall.
Crown Immunity Prisons Bill.
Second reading what day?
12th September, please.
12th of September.